So standing here and worshipping, like, it really brings back good memories. Memories afterwards, we would go down for a smoke at Bottom House. We'd stand there and we'd all talk because we don't have any voices left. It brings back good memories. So if I carry on good time here and I speak fast, I think I'll be done within about an hour and a half.
Speak slow.
Okay, so my name's Brad. Does anyone know where Benoni is? Yeah. Okay, so I'm born and bred through and through Benoni. I'm 22 years old and yeah, I'm a recovering addict. So from an early age, like, I didn't have anything wrong with my upbringing. I really had a good upbringing. For as far as I can remember, my parents always gave me everything I wanted. And yeah, I was sort of spoiled as a child. I was fortunate enough to go to an all-boys school, a boarding school for high school. And this really took the competitiveness in the boarding school to like a whole new level. And it was at the age of 15 I started smoking weed, and I really struggled with the low self-esteem, like a lack of identity. So now when I started smoking the weed, I like almost put my identity in the substance. So it was at the age of 16 where I started taking steroids, and I tried to take my rugby career to the next level. So along with the weed and the steroids, I started going out to clubs and I started taking ecstasy. It was actually at the age of 17 I got selected to be in first team rugby for my school, which at the time was like, it was every boy's dream to be like in the first team rugby. And it was in the beginning of matric, this was 2015, that I was diagnosed with a back condition that would end my sporting career. So this is really where my decision-making skills were put into play, and I could decide if I was going to step up and own up to my injury, or I was going to rebel. So I started rebelling from authorities at school and from my home. And along with this came the extensive use of steroids, and then I started taking cat, and I started hanging around with the dealers of various clubs. So luckily, by the grace of God, I got my matric, and end of 2015 we headed down to Durban for matric vac. Do you all know what matric vac is? Yeah. So it's a full week of partying. So now I thought this was really going to be my time, and it was almost my time to shine. So went down to matric vac, full week of binging, hardly any food, hardly any sleep. I lost over 20 kilos that week.
Sure.
I got home, my parents not hardly recognized me, but they could see a difference, and I just said no, it was because we didn't afford for food. And so anyway, I started studying in 2016. I started studying in Sandton at Varsity College, and along with my partying habits and going out every weekend, I started taking cat, and I really started getting involved with the wrong crowd. And it was 3 months after starting varsity I dropped out, and I started hanging out with new friends and different dealers from various clubs, and along with my new friend group I started taking crystal meth. My dad then had suspicions of me taking and selling drugs, which were true at the time, and he then found me a job in construction. And I really thought like, okay, cool, I can now reward myself by working through the week and then having the full weekend to party and take drugs. So now I was really feeding my addiction. And it was after that my dad then tested me, and obviously I came out positive. He then took me for a little intervention to one of his cop friends in Benoni. So we sat down and I had a full, I agreed to everything that he said. So now they offered for me to go to an outpatient program called Mighty Wings. So I said yes. I sat down and I said yes, I'd go. And he said, okay, go home, take a few moments, think about it, and come back next week. And I really did some thinking in my so-called sober mind, and I thought, you know what, we can overcome this. I can overcome this by myself. So I went to him the following week, and I told him, you know what, I can do this by myself. And I was clean for about 2 weeks, and I fell back into the old ways, straight into addiction. It was after that where I was now revolving my life around using meth and taking the week to recover and having barely any sleep. And now the reputation I was trying to have was causing me to get paranoia, and it started making me live my life in fear. Because I was always big in stature, but I was always small in character. I really struggled with my character. And it was in it was August 2016 where we went through a full binge. It was actually voting day. I missed voting day, my first opportunity to vote. I missed voting day. I was up and down from Joburg to Benoni and Bedford View, and I was going up and down. And after a week, we ended up in a house in Sunninghill. Yes, after a full week binge, not seeing my parents, not eating, not having any sleep, a bit of conflict arose between me and my so-called friends. And Rolf knows a bit of the story. It was really not good, guys. So conflict arose between me and my so-called friend. He decided to pull a gun on me and threaten to kill me. And it was after that where I realized that these people weren't my friends. And after a few trips going up and down from the dealer, I really needed to get home. So on my way home from the north of Joburg to Benoni, it should be a 45-minute drive. It took me over 4 hours. I was in and out of consciousness. Landed up in Kempton, landed up in Boksburg, just not knowing where I was. And I finally got home at about 4 o'clock in the morning. And I was sitting next to my sister, and my parents were away that weekend. I was sitting next to my sister, and I was drinking the milk. You know when you finish the cereal? So I was drinking the milk, and I was messing the milk all over myself. So I was thinking, like, I really didn't know what was going on. And so I went upstairs to go shower, and about 20 minutes after that, my sister heard screaming and shouting, and there I was with my jocks on and one sock. I was running down the stairs. I then fell down the stairs, and I hit my head, and I was unconscious for a bit. My sister then managed to drag me upstairs to get changed. I came downstairs again trying to pull my front door open. I pulled the handle off the hinges, and I really didn't know what was going on. I was holding my head and I was shouting and screaming, and then I went unconscious. My mouth was bleeding, my nose was bleeding, my mouth was foaming, and I was experiencing drug overdose. My sister then, by the grace of God, managed to pick me up and drag me to my mom's car, which she then rushed me to hospital. And as I got to hospital, I was in and out of consciousness. I really can't remember much. I just remember, like in the movies, you see the lights going in the hospital bed and they're rushing me to the emergency room. And I remember almost stabling and then going into a bad place again, and then they had to inject me with adrenaline just to keep me alive. And it was at that point where I knew it was becoming a problem. Like, my parents weren't there. My parents had to fly back from Cape Town, and it was really becoming a problem. And it was after that, 2 days later, I was on my way to Jericho. And so yeah, I was just very fortunate enough to come to Jericho and to spend 600 months here. And I didn't normally talk about my experience here, but I just remember I thought my overdose would have been my rock bottom. So, you know, we all go on our weekends after 3 months. And so it was my weekend time, and it was one of my old friends' birthday that weekend. So now I thought, let me just message him. So I asked Rolf, please man, can I just message my friend? And he asked me, did you use with him? I said, yeah, but it wasn't bad. And he said no. Then he took me to Lawrence, asked the same question. Lawrence said no. And then Lucas, and then Kevin, and everyone else. And they all said no. And what do I go do on my weekend? I go message my friends on Facebook on my sister's laptop. Probably a week after my weekend, my dad found out, phoned on a Wednesday, Uncle Trevor called me and he's like, no Brad, there's big trouble here. So then there was big trouble with my family, and I remember sitting under the tree at Rolf's office, and Rolf called me and he didn't tell my dad that I was listening in on the call. And my dad, he was on loudspeaker, and my dad said he literally didn't want anything to do with me. And as my decision-making skills were put into play when I had my back condition, they were put into play that day again. And I know that if I didn't have the tools and the seeds that were planted from Jericho and from Rolf, I would have made a very bad decision that day to leave the farm. But also, by the grace of God, I was able to stick it through and to keep growing. And 3 months after that, not being extended too much, I went home. And I was lucky enough to go straight into an outpatient program where I spent about 6 months on the program. I was then chosen to be the youth facilitator, and to this day I go every Sunday, every Thursday to Mighty Wings in Benoni, and I give back and I help the youth. And it was about the end of last year I gave my first sermon at church. So I know that if I didn't come here, I know that if it weren't for the seeds that were planted here at Jericho and for the people here at Jericho, it really wouldn't have been possible for me. And I'd just like to end off with a scripture from 2 Corinthians find it. No pressure. Okay, 2 Corinthians 12 from verse 8. 3 times I pleaded with the Lord to take it away from me. But he said to me, my grace is sufficient for you, for my power is made perfect in weakness. Therefore I will boast all the more gladly about my weaknesses, so that Christ's power may rest on me. That is why for Christ's sake I delight in weaknesses, in insults, in hardships, in persecutions, in difficulties. For when I am weak, then I am strong.
Amen.
Amen.